Welcome back, America. We're here with our dear friend Peter Schweizer. He really is a great investigative reporter. He's president of the Government Accountability Institute, a fantastic group, GAI. You write great books. You write great pieces over at Breitbart. Just fantastic, Peter. I wanted to get into this Mamdani. You have put out new information, you and your group, about who he is, what he's doing, who is funding him. And before people finish voting in New York, and people around the country, you need to know exactly who this man is, his family, who's funding him, what he's all about. It is pure evil. Peter Schweizer, go.
Yeah, Mark, what people have to understand is that this election for mayor in New York is really a dark echo of the 9/11 terrorist attack. And you wonder, what do I mean by that? Well, look at the family itself, the Mamdani family itself. They are joined at the hip with the royal family of Qatar, the Al Thani family. They have sent them millions of dollars. They have funded their projects. So why does this family matter? It matters because back in 1996, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks, was granted sanctuary by this very royal family. He was given a no-show job at the Ministry of Water in Qatar, and it was there that he started planning the 9/11 attacks. The FBI was looking for him, Mark, because he had been involved in the 1993 World Trade Center attack, as well as other terrorist attacks. So the FBI went to the royal family and said, we want this man for his involvement in terrorism. What did the family do? They hid him and helped him to escape. They tipped him off. And I would encourage a lot of people to go back and look at the statements that Louis Freeh made back in the day, saying, had they gotten Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, that would have prevented future terrorist attacks like 9/11. So this is the royal family of Qatar. Why do we care about them in the context of Mamdani? Well, first of all, there's the financial connection that we talked about. Millions of dollars bankrolling the Mamdani family. Second of all, this same family is now on social media around the world. And what are they doing, Mark? They're pushing Mamdani's campaign. They're pushing his policy positions. They're pushing his poll numbers. They're encouraging people to vote for him, to financially support him. So they're cheerleading for him. And what did Mamdani do in September, just a few weeks ago? He was on Qatari TV. Now, what American politician running to be a mayor of a city goes on Qatari TV? Mamdani goes on Qatari TV, and what does he do? He talks about the jihad, the verbal jihad, as it were. He talks about the fact that the United States is underwriting genocide in Israel. This is the same family, the Mamdanis, by the way, who say that Darfur, where 400,000 Christians were slaughtered by Islamists, that was not jihad. This is the same family that says that terrorism is a Western invention. It's not an Islamist invention. So you have this bizarre situation where a political candidate in New York speaks the language of jihad, is financially connected to the family that helped the 9/11 plotters get away so they could bring down the Twin Towers. And it would be a tragedy if the Qataris would see a occupant of City Hall when they were the same people that were involved in what happened in 9/11 and bringing down the Twin Towers.
1993 World Trade Center bombing. What's that connection?
Yeah, so Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was one of the people that plotted and was involved in that. It's when he was on the run from that attack that he ended up in Qatar. And so the Qatar relationship has been long with terrorism. You've talked about, of course, their ties to Hamas, their ties to Hezbollah. I should point out, Mark, that in addition to the Qatari connection, there are also a lot of other international enemies of the United States that are cheering on Mamdani. For example, the International Quran News Agency, which is based out of Iran, has run glowing profiles on Mamdani, talking about the fact that he can win in New York, that his policy positions and that his values are Islamic, in their words. They talk about how his strategy strategy is to cultivate Muslim votes. So the Iranian news agencies are cheering them on. In addition to that, there's a news publication in Lebanon linked to Hezbollah, the terrorist organization. They ran a story talking about Mamdani's rise after he won the Democratic nomination in New York, and they were thrilled. And it's very interesting, Mark, to point out, in that article, they said if Mamdani wins in New York and becomes mayor of New York, he has a future political career on the national stage. Among the positions they mentioned he might get to assume is head of Homeland Security. Now, why would a terrorist organization like Hezbollah want Mamdani to be head of the Department of Homeland Security? I think the evidence is pretty clear.
You're putting this information out. You're now putting it out to millions of people nationally. What do you want to bet it's ignored by the New York Times in New York, by the New York Daily News in New York, by the Associated Press, by Reuters and all the rest? You do all the footwork. You pull all the investigative data together. What do you want to bet this is ignored because they want this guy elected?
Yeah, I think it is going to be ignored. And look, there are other financial connections. There's an Imam Wahhaj that we talk about. This imam, by the way, has 3 children that last year were sentenced to life in prison for their involvement in a terrorist attack. He is supporting Mamdani's campaign in New York. And in 2021, in an interview, he actually predicted the rise of a Muslim candidate in New York and said the time was ready, and the time was ready for Muslims to seize political power in New York. So they are ignoring this. The stakes could not be higher. It's not just an issue for New Yorkers. It should be an issue for all Americans that are concerned about our security. We have a candidate who speaks the language of jihad, and we have a candidate whose family is tied to individuals or a family in Qatar that has been linked to international terrorist networks.
You know, I get very frustrated by hearing people in the media, conservatives, Republicans, what have you, say things like, okay, he'll win in New York, and then they'll never win anywhere else in the United States because we'll see how he destroys New York. They don't understand the thinking of these Islamists. That's not the plan. The plan is to run people for city council, to run people for mayors, to pick off one area after another after another. They changed the voting system in order to get him nominated as a Democrat, even though he's a democratic socialist, AKK Marxist, Islamist who hates America and hates Jews. This is a dire threat to the country, and we better wake the hell up to this. Welcome back, America. We're here with Peter Schweizer, the president of the Government Accountability Institute, really a national treasure. Peter, your folks were at the Roundtable on Antifa and the Antifa movement that the president held at the White House. So important what he's doing, trying to get to the bottom of these radical organizations, because they are nefarious, they're evil, they're funded by dark money, by billionaires, by foreign governments. And here's Antifa. I talk about the fusion of Marxism and Islamism. You just spoke about Islamism, now let's move to Marxism. And that would be Antifa. What do you know about Antifa?
Yeah, so I mean, Antifa, there's not an organization per se named Antifa. It's a network of radical organizations that, as you pointed out, are Marxist. They're oftentimes sympathetic to Islamist causes. And as we demonstrated in our research that we presented to the president, they are heavily funded. Some of that funding comes from sources in the United States. You have advisory firms like Arabella that are advising groups like the Tides Foundation that we point out have sent money to organizations that are involved in violent protests. There were violent protests down in Atlanta, Georgia, around something called Cop City, where the police were trying to create a training facility for law enforcement. The radicals didn't want that, so they violently protested. They threw Molotov cocktails. They engaged in other violent acts. Members of those organizations were charged under law for domestic terrorism or domestic terrorism-related charges. Well, those organizations, some of those organizations were funded by the Tides Foundation. So you have these radical progressive groups in the United States that are funding, in some instances, violent organizations. And to be clear here, Mark, I'm not talking about groups that just talk about radical things. I'm talking about groups that are actually involved in violence in our streets. So you have the domestic side. You also have the foreign side, Mark. There's a American billionaire named Roy Singham who sold his business. It was called ThoughtWorks for about $1 billion, moved to Beijing, China, which is where he lives now. He's very close to the CCP. He counts them amongst his friends. He goes to Chinese Communist Party events. He's friends with their propagandists. And he funds groups in the United States through the so-called People's Forum in New York. And these are groups like the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and these are pro-Chinese, anti-American, and they lead violent protests. It could be over Black Lives Matter. It could be over the issues in the Middle East. It could be over law enforcement issues. It doesn't matter. And so you have these organizations that are not organic per se. They are funded and they are organized. And we think it's important not only for the administration to know, but to investigate them for possible criminal conduct, because you're an attorney better than I am. I'm not an attorney. If you are involved in funding entities that you know are engaged in criminal conduct, you could potentially be charged with a crime for doing that.
I don't know if there is, probably is, but there ought to be a task force looking at all this with Treasury, State, the FBI, the IRS, among others, pulling together all the possible legal issues, pulling together all the investigative issues, trying to attack it from every angle. It's a big federal government. It's been used against us. It's been used against conservative groups. It's been used against our president. It's been used against Republican members of the Senate. How about we put it to good use? If we have foreign countries, along with these billionaires and others who are pouring money into this country to overthrow us, if we have people, dark money in the shadows in our country doing the same thing, and we have, and we know this is going on, we better put an end to it or we will cease to exist. There's no reason for this. There's absolutely no reason, which is why I'm so proud that the president, obviously he's on the ball. He's saying he pulls it together. He had your group there and many others. And you had independent journalists who were beaten to a pulp by Antifa and so forth. And the mainstream media, which isn't mainstream, it's left-wing, it's Democrat, it's hostile to the country, has essentially covered it up. You had Antifa attacking the Portland, Oregon courthouse, the federal courthouse, month after month in 2020, still using it for target practice. And then you have a federal judge out there, a real whack job in what she wrote, talking about, well, you know, this kind of free speech and so forth and so on. This is normal in our country and so forth. So we got a big problem here. Any final words, Peter?
Yeah, we were happy to participate in the roundtable. President Trump asked us to share our findings with the Attorney General and with the Director of the FBI. We are glad to do so, and we hope that they will put it to good use.
And I'll just say again, I don't know of another president who would be doing this, who really gets into the weeds and says, I love our country, Mr. and Mrs. America, I got to do what I can to protect you, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's ICE, whether it's securing the border, whether it's building up the military, and here, the enemy within. Peter Schweizer, great group, great guy. Thank you for everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.